I am the conference advisor, also in charge of preparing the final report of the conference. So I'm dying for your input, because otherwise what could I write up? I apologize if you had to wait a bit. I was in the other session and then missed the bus, but I found my way. What we're going to do in this session is really the idea to identify expectations and emphasis, points of emphasis that are important from the perspective of the different national delegations. Because after all, this is a conference of high interaction between the academic community, the policymakers, civil society, the private sector. But it is also, in the end, extremely important that at the policy and at the political level, the outcome of this conference will be taken up in a consistent and serious way. The actionable dimension that was highlighted this morning in different speeches, which should really make this conference a different one than some others that have taken place before that were more of an explorative nature. So very simply, what I would like to do is, I know that quite many of you are prepared to highlight the points that are important from your perspective. I'd like to do that really on the basis of when the different delegations would like to speak. It's up to you who is speaking. Yeah, and Jamaica will be first, that not because it's Jamaica, well, maybe also because it's Jamaica, but because there were also practical reasons for that, Ms. Freckleton, so that we will ensure. There's still here tags for countries that I hope will also be here, so please come and grab it, and then you can show when you want to speak. I don't have a particular order in mind, but of course, in a faculty, you can also make assignments, so really make sure that you have to speak at some point. So we'll see how it will work. And then we will of course take note of the points that will come forward and try to find ways also in the coming days to integrate them as much as possible in discussions and in the end also in the report of the meeting as a whole. Are there any questions as to how we will proceed in the next one and a half hour? No? Okay, so feel free to intervene at any point in time. Yes, we'll start with Jamaica, and next is St. Kitts.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Shea Freckleton, and I will be presenting the statement on behalf of the Government of Jamaica regarding what we have been doing to date with respect to the 2030 agenda. Let me state first that Jamaica played an important role in shaping the 2030 agenda on sustainable development. And in this regard, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, provided leadership to a national interministerial working group constituted to provide inputs into the intergovernmental negotiation process at the UN, which led to the ultimate adoption of the 2030 agenda. Through the Interministerial Working Group, a series of consultations were held with the objective of aligning the 2030 agenda with Jamaica's long-term development plan, Vision 2030 Jamaica. This process resulted in a national outcome document which provided a seamless integration of the agreed outcomes and targets of the 2030 agenda with the National Development Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation Framework. In corroborating the conclusion, A rapid integrated assessment was undertaken by a team of sustainable development experts from the United Nations Development Programme, which found a 91% alignment of our national goals and outcomes with the 2030 Agenda. This has been reflected as one of the highest levels of alignment found anywhere in the world. A roadmap for implementation of the SDGs in Jamaica was completed in early 2017, resulting from the MAPS mission, which you heard earlier this morning, which commenced in 2016. Now, due to the strong alignment of the SDGs and Vision 2030 Jamaica, the imperative for localization and implementation of the SDGs will be facilitated through our successive 3-year medium-term socio-economic policy frameworks. As the country transitions into full implementation of the SDGs, the establishment and operation of national and subnational coordination, monitoring, and evaluation mechanisms have become of critical importance. As the Prime Minister reflected this morning, we recently received approval for the establishment of a national multi-sectoral oversight committee comprising representatives from government, private sector, and civil society organizations. The committee is a modified structure of the national working group mentioned before, but includes a more diversified and higher level membership. Some of its main functions include providing policy advice to the government in monitoring the implementation of the SDGs, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and other platforms of action, oversight of the alignment of the SDGs with policies and plans through strategic partnerships, and monitoring and reviewing the implementation of the SDGs against the agreed targets and indicators. The committee will be chaired by the PIOJ as the lead national focal point for the SDGs and will meet on a quarterly basis. The government has also established an SDGs core group comprising representatives from the Planning Institute, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, STATIN. The core group meets on a monthly basis and is mandated to make routine operational and managerial decisions on behalf of the Oversight Committee. The secretariat services for both these committees are provided by the Planning Institute of Jamaica. So you'll see what I've reflected above is what is our national coordination mechanism for the SDGs. Now, the SDGs require a robust review and follow-up mechanism in order to monitor progress. In this regard, our Statistical Institute has played a lead role at the global level, representing the country and the Caribbean sub-region on the Interagency Expert Group on the SDGs indicators. The SDGs is a data-intensive global agenda that requires significant investments in statistics globally in order to effectively measure and monitor progress towards these goals. The situation in Jamaica is no different. In order to respond to the data demands of the SDGs, Jamaica's national statistics system will require significant financial investments and capacity building to enable us to effectively monitor this comprehensive agenda. In recognition of this fact, STATIN, with support from Paris 21, has initiated a program of action towards the strengthening of Jamaica's national statistics system. This includes the drafting of proposed amendments to the Statistics Act and other relevant legislation to establish a coordination mechanism for the NSS in Jamaica. Also included in this program is the development of a national strategy for the development of statistics, which will provide a roadmap for the improvement of official statistics in Jamaica. These are only a few steps being taken currently to bring our national statistics system to a level necessary to facilitate the effective monitoring of the implementation of the SDGs. Development of new research and data collection instruments in all areas of the SDGs and modification to new ones are priorities in moving forward. This is particularly so in addressing inadequacies and lack of data on the environment and the need for an integrated data collection, analysis, monitoring, and evaluation system coinciding with the 3 dimensions of sustainable development. Let me briefly highlight some of the current challenges and future priorities. The real challenge for Jamaica is not about localizing the 2030 agenda, but about implementing policies and programs that will trigger fast and sustained progress towards the goals in the context of limited fiscal space. The main challenges for the full implementation of the SDGs are primarily in the areas of financing, effective development cooperation, and data for monitoring and accountability. There is need for additional and improved financial resources and the need for emphasis on the importance of data nationally to ensure more timely, accurate, adequate, and reliable data. Due to the resource constraints of both government and or international development partners, some very important surveys that were done in the past are not currently being done, and this has compounded the existing data problems. Some of these include the National Reproductive Health Survey, the Adult Literacy Survey, and the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. The need for a data revolution to meet the integrated, holistic requirements of sustainable development is yet to be explored in all its dimensions. Arising from the SDGs roadmap for implementation, proposals were made to address financing the SDGs in Jamaica from both the public and the private sector perspectives. The ambition of our Vision 2030 Jamaica and the SDGs require prioritization of catalytic actions that can drive progress across multiple goals and targets simultaneously. And I want to close by underscoring the commitment made by our Prime Minister this morning as we seek to learn from the other countries and we in turn reciprocate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Thank you for the very concise and specific presentation. It struck me that you mentioned lack of data on environmental issues and criteria. Is that due to the fact that it takes time, or is it due to the fact that it's not clear what needs to be measured and that must be elaborated more internationally?
I will begin to answer and then I will defer to my colleague from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica who sits on the IEAG. But certainly with respect to the data on indicators, globally, these are areas that have not been agreed to and defined. The metadata have not been defined. So when we speak to the issues around environmental data, it's not only an issue for Jamaica, but it is a global issue. And I'll just ask Leisha to continue the explanation.
I don't know that there's much that can be added to what Tony Shea was saying. The issue with environmental statistics is that it is an emerging area of statistics. And as such, the robustness of the framework around measuring certain of these indicators has not yet been agreed upon internationally or developed. So globally, there is an issue. Additionally, for us in Jamaica, environmental statistics is also a relatively new area of focus. So the systems around collecting the data and presenting the information are still being developed, and that is the issue that we're facing.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Myrna Ellis. I'm from Trinidad. So what is it's like an oxymoron that we're facing right now. Because if you go back to the origin of sustainable development, it came out of the 1970 environmentalists recognizing that there is a problem. But it's 2017 and we're not collecting environmental data. And that's because, ladies and gentlemen, we've never felt that the environment mattered. Never felt. We're now beginning to feel the effects of it because of climate change and other things like that. But we always took the environment for granted. And I'm not trying to disrespect you or your company in any way at all. I'm just saying that that's the reality. But I'm glad to realize that it's now on the table. For example, the main speaker this morning was an economist. He was a great speaker, and again, emphasis not on the environment. But we're getting there. Yeah.
Sharifa Ali Abdullah, UNDP Trinidad and Tobago Countries Office. Just on the issue of data, I understand that CARICOM has a project that's looking at a framework for the region as well as ECLAC. I'm not sure if we have representatives from CARICOM or ECLAC to speak to those two initiatives, but it has to do with trying to look at a framework to assist in this area. So that would be instructive here so that we don't reinvent the wheel.
As a member of the Standing Conference of Caribbean Statisticians, just to say for CARICOM, there's a regional statistics work program, and what it's trying to do is to improve statistics in the region, in different areas, but the environment still remains a problem area. And as Leisha said, most of them are tier 3s in the SDGs. So that is the issue you have. But even though CARICOM is helping, I think there is a need for national statistics offices and for national governments to invest. What CARICOM can do is assist a lot in maybe in methodologies and training, but actual data collection and energizing has to be a national priority.
Just a little clarification that I need right now. So we are saying that the environment, we need to measure and all, right? Well, the question is actually this: what aspect of the environment? Because the environment is a very wide term, right? You have to measure the air, because that's where global warming is taking place. You have to measure the ground, because that's where we actually burn things to impact the atmosphere. So the question is, as I stated, what aspect of the environment that you're trying to get data from?
Well, we're going to draw your attention to the specific indicators from the SDGs. And what they're trying to measure in the SDGs are all the areas that you've reflected. Issues relating to air quality, pollution. You will recognize that goal 14 looks at life underwater. So all the issues relating to oceans, etc., are reflected in goal 14. In goal 15, it looks at life on land. So issues around deforestation, desertification, all of those issues. So environmental issues are very broad. As Leisha mentioned, globally, there is no consensus around how some of these things will be measured. And what we have also recognized nationally too is that some of these targets and indicators are actually very complex. And for us, we don't normally collect data in that fashion at a national level. So what it is forcing us to do is also to re-examine how we collect data and what we collect in order to effectively monitor these SDGs. The metadata coming out of this interagency expert group on the SDGs, they are the ones which comprises or representatives from national statistics offices from globally and also the UN entities. And there has to be a consensus or an agreement around what are we going to measure so that it can be comparable across countries. So that is a process that is ongoing.
I think I should.
You can have that discussion with our
Yeah.
colleagues, because we wouldn't want to detain
Yeah.
other countries from making their presentations to be discussing this environmental indicators matter. But our colleague from Statin would certainly be able to provide you with more information, because she actually sits on this global committee.
I
Thank
see in
you.
any case that we've here touched an important point that is, I think, of concern to everyone, and we will certainly note that also, and we have the chance to follow up on that. Tony, thanks very much. Sorry? A quick one, but very quick.
Yeah, I'm really amazed, because in the World Development Indicators, you have a lot of indicators dealing with the environment. And that document was produced many, many years ago, so I'm actually surprised.
Okay, I think that the experts can further look into that. But I believe it's a relevant point that we've touched upon. Please, St. Kitts.
afternoon. My name is Kay Bass. I'm the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Aviation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and I'm here to present the national perspectives on behalf of that country. The SDGs are closely aligned with the Federation's revised National Adaptation Strategy and the overall National Development Agenda. There are some key priority areas of the National Adaptation Strategy which I would like to highlight, and they include the social development and poverty reduction, social development issues, strategic sectoral focus, environmental protection, land management, and disaster mitigation, and some cross-cutting issues. The Fresh Start and Prosperity Agenda of the government has as its main focus social development and poverty reduction. It is guided by the National Social Protection Strategy and Plan of Action, which has as its core objectives to strengthen social assistance, improve effectiveness of training programs, provide affordable health care for all, improve access to health care services, strengthen labor markets to ensure productivity and competitiveness, and improve access to employment. You will note that these are aligned with the SDGs 1 through 5, 8, and 10. Several ongoing social protection interventions include: 1, the establishment of the National Single Household Registry; 2, the completion of the work to develop an appropriate proxy means test to objectively target the most vulnerable families and individuals; 3, the development of a management information system to effectively manage data; and 4, the expansion of the Mold, Empower, Nurture, and Direct, MEND for short, Families Program, which offers assistance to low-income families. A comprehensive National Technical and Vocational Education and Training TVET implementation plan was developed to ensure improvements in the delivery of skills, education, and training in the Federation. Another significant initiative of the NAS under the social development and poverty reduction priority area is that the government has implemented the PEP, or People's Employment Program, now termed STEP, Skills Training Empowerment Program, which seeks to provide vocational skills training for targeted youth. Under the social development key area, aligned with SDG 16, St. Kitts and Nevis continues to make strides to reform the safety and security sector through a multi-pronged approach. The Police High Command launched a 6-point plan of action with the main objective being to enhance public safety and security within the Federation. This plan outlines focused activities in crime prevention, intelligence-led policing, targeted policing operations, engagement of stakeholders, collaboration with other agencies, and continuous improvement and administration. The creation of a Criminal Justice Strategic Board is designed to bring together on a regular basis high-level personnel from various departments to jointly strategize and direct the implementation of initiatives to drive criminal justice reform in the Federation. Last year, the government launched the 5-year Youth Empowerment Services YES project, which is a 5-year project from 2016 to 2020 in collaboration with the USAID. It is intended to increase the capacity of regional bodies, national governments, and community stakeholders to reduce the risk factors that drive youth crime, violence, and victimization, and to strengthen protective factors that build resiliency, with the aim of reducing youth involvement in crime and violence. Under the strategic sectoral focus, these sectors are the main revenue earners and are aligned with SDGs 8, 12, and 14. They include tourism, agriculture, the Citizenship by Investment Program, international financial services, and renewable energy. The environmental protection, land management, and disaster mitigation is another key priority area of the National Adaptation Strategy, aligned with SDGs 11 through 15, 11, 13, 14, 15, and 17. St. Kitts and Nevis, like other countries, is vulnerable to the devastating effects of climate change. In an effort to encourage the growth of the renewable energy sector, the government has outfitted some government buildings with solar panels and installed solar farms at the airport, which provide all of the power for that facility. It also offers concessions to citizens importing solar energy equipment. Further, the government has embarked on a project to replace high-pressure sodium lighting with light-emitting diode lamps throughout the Federation. All this while we continue to pursue the development of geothermal energy, both for local consumption and for regional export. Some cross-cutting issues included in the NAS include the development of the private sector via youth entrepreneurship and small and medium-sized enterprises. The government has implemented several initiatives to support SME startups. These include Fresh Start Program, which provides concessionary loans of up to $100,000 to individuals wishing to start their own business. Since 2015, over 500 people have benefited, and almost 40 million in loans have already been approved under the scheme. The government is also focused on other cross-cutting issues such as public sector reform, infrastructure for development, and regional integration, all of which are aligned with SDGs 6, 7, and 9. But we are facing some challenges which are very similar to those of Jamaica and other countries in the region. There's the challenge of being able to align our national budget with the priorities of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are also trying to get all ministries to streamline their budgets and policies in line with the Sustainable Development Agenda. Human resource capacity for adaptive management within the context of the Sustainable Development Framework, such as policy coordination, policy analysis, and monitoring and evaluation. We, like Jamaica, are also experiencing problems with the data collecting and data collection. The National Statistical System requires enhancement to facilitate monitoring and reporting on progress. Also, mainstreaming Sustainable Development Goals to the respective operational plans of the different ministries. Limited financial resources to facilitate the pursuance of targets and monitoring of progress. Lack of data sharing protocols, agreements, limited cooperation between international agencies. And in closing, I'll just wish to mention some opportunities and the expectation from this conference. The improved capacity of the National Statistical System, which will redound to the generation of adequate, relevant, coherent, timely, and quality statistics to meet national, regional, and international data needs. To regional cooperation and strategic resource allocation for important and priority initiatives. The revision of legislative frameworks to increase productivity, remove bottlenecks, and promote economic growth. From this conference, St. Kitts and Nevis hopes that it will be equipped with the necessary tools, guidance, and assistance that will improve efforts at the national level to be able to make meaningful contributions to regional initiatives in pursuit of the achievement of the SDGs for a truly transformed St. Kitts and Nevis region and the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Unless there are pressing questions, I propose we go to the next speaker, because we have to keep time in mind. Belize, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Darlene Padron. I'm from Belize, from the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Forestry, the Environment, Sustainable Development, and Immigration. It's a long name, right? It's almost the entire countries. Okay, I'm presenting on Belize's perspective as it relates to the Sustainable Development Goals. Our country our strategies have been aligned to the SDGs. We have our long-term vision, which is Horizon 2030, and as stated there, a country of peace and tranquility where citizens live in harmony with the natural environment and enjoy a high quality of life. That's for the long-term vision. For the short-term vision, the medium-term, which is the Growth and Sustainable Development Strategy, 2016-2019, we have a better quality of life for our Belizeans living now and in the future. We have the different thematic areas that both documents refer to, and as you can see, they're aligned. So when we talk about demographic governance, we're talking about social cohesion and resilience in the medium term. This is what it will look like in the medium term for this strategy. We have the 4 critical success factors and the necessary conditions that each success factor would need to focus on. And this is what it would look like if we put it in one diagram. Horizon 2030, medium-term development strategy, and the goals. They're all aligned. So we can say that is one of our main successes, having those documents in place. Another success or progress that we have made would be having an institutional mechanism for the implementation. We're still in that stage. The document would refer to, we would have the cabinet, then the COs, working technical committees, which would be heads of departments, and then we have an M&E system that the working tables, which would be persons that would deal with statistics in the different ministries that would work on with. So we are working with our draft M&E system plan. Currently being, we have a first phase. So, and all the indicators would be, are being aligned to the SDGs indicators as well. We still haven't finalized that. And the stakeholder engagement in both documents, civil society, private sector, academia, they were part of the documents. Their inputs they were consulted. Challenges that our country would be facing in regards to the implementation of the strategies would be human and financial resources, like in many other countries, I believe. We have the alignment of the national budget. In Belize, we have the program budgeting from 2014. We have that. It wasn't enforced until last year, 2016 budget, but we're still not where we need to be. Aligning our budget to the SDGs, to the strategy, we're still not at that point yet. But we are getting, capacity building is one of the main things that we would lack. So we are working with it as well. Data, like in other countries, I believe, we have environmental data, but it's not uniform, so it's all scattered. So coordination as well is one of our challenges when it comes to data and the management. We do collect data, but we don't have a structure yet. We're working with it, but we don't have the structure yet, although we have the Statistics Institute of Belize, but we're still not where we need to be. So the opportunities that we see that we have would be the program budgeting, where we are aligning our strategies to our budget to the strategy. The national statistical system is being developed in the country, so we're seeing a light under the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel with this system when it comes to data. And the sourcing of donor organizations, we are getting a lot of assistance through international donors, and as it relates to capacity building, so we think that we can get a lot of opportunities there, and we are getting the opportunities. And when it comes to the expectations for what we want to get from this is the knowledge sharing and experiences from other countries, how we can better off what we are doing, and also, in particular, to partnerships and financial sourcing from international and national organizations. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. Very concise, very candid also where you are. Any points?
I'm seeing mostly that the approaches are theoretical. Have you actually started any form of hard implementation?
We are on that stage now. Actually, also on the road mapping for implementation, we're working on it as well. So it's really just the strategies that we have. So it's implementation phase that we need to go now with.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Grenada.
Good afternoon. My name is Yolande Newton, Ministry of Economic Development, Trade and Planning. I will present to you Grenada's perspective based on the outline that was sent to us and within the time given. For us, the SDGs presents an opportunity for us to examine and realign our national priorities to ensure that it is more inclusive and participatory, meaning that some of the groups and so that we would have not considered in previous planning, we are now forced to look at all groups, all sectors, and to adopt a more inclusive approach in terms of involving the private sector, the NGOs, all the other groups within the country responsible for national development. It motivates us to build on our MDG successes, and we have a table on that, which I'm unable to share with you today, but if we take a snapshot of it, we would have seen Grenada would have performed well on the 8 goals. It encourages us to mobilize and local and regional partnerships. Currently, we have a multi-sectoral team called the Committee of Social Partners, of which we have our private sector rep here with us on this mission. They're responsible for national policy and planning, as well as regional partnerships with international agencies, such as the UNDP and ECLAC. It also compels government to consider and find a balance between the social, environment, and economic factors, look for the trade-offs, and to maximize resources, not wanting to have any significant adverse effect on the environment. What we have been doing since 2015, we have initiated the process to integrate SDGs into our programs of the Growth and Poverty Reduction Strategy, which we call the GPRS. And what will succeed that is our National Sustainable Development Plan 2030. We have started our local consultations on that. But in the meantime, while this is happening, we have the assistance of the MAPS and ECLAC in examining our strategic results under the SDGs, what we are doing well, where are the gaps, what sort of institutional arrangements would help us to get where we want to be. We have also engaged in capacity building, training, seminars, workshops, and across sectors. So it's not just policy or government workers, but also for all other groups, including youth and physically challenged and elderly. We are currently strengthening our data sources and national statistics offices, and in the couple weeks, we will have Paris 21 in Grenada helping us with that. We also have the UNDP helping us with our statistics, strengthening our statistics office. We have a lot of electronic devices, which we are now using for surveys rather than the paper. We are saving the environment. We have initiated dialogue on the enabling environment for the SDGs as well as our NSDP, National Sustainable Development Plan. So how do we coordinate? The statistics is working on some areas, environment working on some areas, our policy unit working on some areas. How all this information is coming together to help to inform planning as well as budgeting. And again, with the assistance of, of the UNDP, World Bank, and the CDF, we have institutionalized the web-based public sector management system to monitor the SDGs after we have done our mapping and integration. We are currently conducting our advocacy programs at home. What we have done so far, we've had informational sessions for decision makers. We have SDG banners and posters distributed at key entities. In September, we will have a school competition logo for the thematic areas of the NSDP, but through the lens of the SDG. We also have an SDG wall. We will continue our knowledge sharing forum, including social media and apps. What we consider to be some of our challenges are local coordination and cooperation of partners. We have met with them. We have explained what the SDG is globally and what it means for us as a country, opportunities presented. But I think to persons, unless it doesn't become real to them, unless it affects their lives. So you still have some hesitancy or some resistance in terms of what does this mean for us, the SDGs? And this is why we are continuing our advocacy program. Accessibility to required financing, knowing where it is, what type of support it is, and how we can coordinate that. We found ourselves having to chase or run after these supports wherever they are. But however, if there is a map, and I think maybe the UN can take the lead on that, if you can identify your key agencies or other entities outside of the UN that are providing specific support, we better guide the countries rather than 2 days before some event and you are aware that this is happening. So better coordination for accessing financing, or not only financing, technical support, whatever it is. And which we've all been talking about, inadequate human capacity to coordinate implementation. And I think we're referring to here the number, because we have had training. We have a group of persons in Grenada who have been exposed to the training, but I think it's the number of people. Our expectations for this conference since we have the similar challenges, how do we as a region can come together to discuss solutions and also, again, to continue learning from each other? Thank you.
Thank you. One question from my side. This web-based public sector management system, it was many words, is that already up the web right now? Is it
with the help of the
UNDP,
source? We have developed the manual.
Yeah.
When I get back home, then the RFPs will be sent out to have someone contracted to actually build the system.
And is it going to be open source, that everybody can see it or not?
There will be different access points. Okay. So not everyone will have access to all of the information. The agencies will have, the agencies we work with will have some access. The ministers will have some access based on where they are in the world. The ministries, because they will be inputting information, they will input information. They will have certain access, and we at Economic and Technical Cooperation will be managing the system.
And is there an idea also to give some access to the wider public, or is that still one step?
For research purposes, where we would have published documents, yes. Okay. We also are integrating our budgeting and smart stream accounting system into it. So there are It's ambitious.
Well, it's ambitious, but interesting, I think, and maybe an interesting point also for others. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
St. Lucia.
Good afternoon. Tisha Jabatis with the Department of Sustainable Development within the Ministry of Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development in St. Lucia. So this is our plans for the Sustainable Development Goals and how we see we localizing the implementation of the SDGs. To date, we are having at least 4 significant activities being undertaken. The Cabinet has approved the Sustainable Development Goals National Committee, which comprises CSOs, private sector and government agencies who have met, and we have already outlined terms of reference and work plans to be undertaken in terms of the implementation of the SDGs. A ministerial task force has also been commissioned by the Prime Minister to undertake this task. Also, currently we are undertaking the Vulnerability Resilience Country Profile, which will assist in us prioritizing the Samoa pathway, which is also linked to the SDGs. And this will be done, of course, through the use of our National Development planning process under the foundation of prioritizing the SDGs locally. So this plan will be done with what we're calling the 6 pillars, strategic pillars, which was developed within the Economic Development Department. So these 6 strategic pillars, which will be used in prioritizing the SDGs, are as follows: building productive capacity and expanding growth opportunities, enhancing the labor force through education, training, and workforce development, environmental protection, adaptation for environmental sustainability and climate change, infrastructure, connectivity, and energy, and institutional structures and good governance, as well as social transformation, building social resilience, and social capital. So we'll see that those 6 pillars, of course, fit into a number of the 17 goals which have been highlighted. Again, we have heard a number of those challenges being addressed by our fellow Caribbean delegates. Resource constraints, of course, financial and human, for us to collect, compile, and analyze and report on data. The absence of data sharing protocols and agreements, for example, MOUs within the various agencies, and to ensure that there is collaboration on data sharing. Limited access to available data from various agencies. We find that we do have environmental data among the agencies. However, again, the coordination is a challenge. And insufficient general public awareness and education campaigns on the SDGs in terms of the nationals understanding their roles and how important it is for us to implement the SDGs on the ground. And finally, moving forward, what we have been doing, we have held, as I said before, the inaugural meeting of the committee, and the development of the TRs and work plan have been set. In terms of under the increased St. Lucia's capacity to monitor multilateral environmental agreements and sustainable development, we have been increasing. Well, currently in St. Lucia, we have been undertaking capacity building among various government agencies, civil society organizations, and NGO in various forms. We are looking at specifically data and information management, monitoring, evaluation, communicating environmental information. Those areas were key because it was indicated under our national capacity assessment project that those are some of the limitations to accessing information and reporting evidence-based information on the international arena. So through this project, we are building our local capacity to be able to inform and be able to communicate information that is based on, well, evidence. And finally, we're also building an environmental information system under that project I mentioned shortly, with core sustainable development and environmental indicators. although the project specifically is leading to monitoring multilateral environmental agreements, specifically 3 MEAs, we are using the components under the Sustainable Development indicators to focus those indicators for the MEAs to the SDGs. And so we believe that incorporating our SDGs within our current work strategy is a best way for St. Lucia to move in terms of mainstreaming it on the ground. And I believe that's it from St. Lucia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I thought that particularly the point that you made about data sharing
Right.
is interesting. So we're often complaining about data availability and the need to collect them, but I understand that even when they're there, it's not yet obvious that they're there in the right hands.
Yes, so currently we do have a draft MOU. So we're at the process of we're getting the help of the government to ensure that the agencies at the highest level, permanent secretaries, ministers, ensure that the agencies sign on to the MOU. So this is the challenge we're faced with right now.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
I am Elaine Campbell. I am here at the Faculty of Law doing my MPhil PhD in law. And therefore, I have a two-part question, one probably political, the other legal. Having listened to the conversation and the opening this morning, it's truly inspiring. But my first question is, how stable are these goals to the political whim of local and international political constraints? For example, in the Caribbean, it is known that when a political party comes in, there might be very good programs in place, but because of their will, they change programs. So good programs which were in place are put on the back burner or totally thrown out, and therefore, new programs have to be started again. Is there something built in this agenda to say that once certain actions are taken place, caveat so to speak, we therefore go on with whatever project that is, or projects which are in place, so we can actually eventually achieve these goals? The other question is, at which point, we now know that these are aspirational goals, at which point are these goals are going to become legally binding on CARICOM and Caribbean nations?
Two very good questions. The question is, who is here in the position to answer them? I can give you one observation on your first question. I've been a politician myself for many years. So
I know, I live in the Netherlands also.
All right. Oh, I don't hope you've seen too much of me then. But what I found very interesting in the presentation by Jamaica this morning and in the documents that I've read is that I believe it's the document Vision 2030, that it was not only the Prime Minister writing a foreword, but also the leader of the opposition. And I thought that was excellent, because that shows a kind of commitment that goes across parties. Now, there might still be a lot of politics coming after that, because in the end, it's of course, do you choose education or health? And if you choose education, is it the tertiary education or is it the preschool? Whatever. But still, it is partially an answer on your question. Please.
The second one? I don't have a question. I just want to share an experiment that Grenada is in the process of doing, is the planning of our 2030 national plan. The idea is that the process that we're going to be looking at is, one, we have formed a steering committee that comprises all stakeholders, including the political parties, and it's going to be a national effort. So we're starting from the ground, come up. So we go to the people with a clean slate, and they write on it, and we put together that plan. And the understanding and the agreement is that this is the plan that will be for the country. It's not going to be for any politician or any party in particular. However, what the politicians do have as an option is maybe what they choose to implement at what time and how they do it. But overall, the plan will be owned by the people.
Okay. 2 further questions or remarks, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, actually, it's just a comment in response. I'm a Deputy Auditor General for Jamaica, and just to note that when we audit ministries, departments, and agencies, and in fact incorporate in our performance audit profile of the entities, we actually link to Vision 2030. And if you look across the ministry's profiles for Jamaica, you will see that link in their mission statements or in their own organizational strategic plans. And so that is an assurance I can think of that will show that there is continuity beyond. We're also about to participate in an audit of preparedness for SDG goals, and that the initial phase in terms of the e-learning part will begin July, August. But we are moving forward in terms of auditing that. But just to assure you that, you know, it's not necessarily a hopeless situation when you change governments, because Jamaica has had Vision 2030 as a very integral part of its overall strategic plan and plans for the various ministries. And we, in fact, at the Auditor General's Department are going to, well, we have been auditing with that reference, you know, for some ministries in terms of specific aspects. And going forward, we will be going to look at the preparedness, maybe a whole of government approach that has not been decided, right? So
thank you.
Just
I'm sorry, I cannot take all the questions. There's one more, yeah? Are you okay?
It's really just on the first one as well. Lisa's case. Horizon 2030 was being developed by the opposition party now, which was the ruling party then, and then this ruling party now took it further and developed the plan. We also, in the growth and sustainable development strategy term, we also consulted them, engaged them as much as possible, so they have been aware, and we also mainstreamed all the different, aligned all the different strategies, ministerial, sectoral strategies to this national one. The problem that we are facing now is really with the implementation phase, trying to engage them more than they have been now. Because then it really, when we have another election and we change, then the implementation phase would be maybe different. But in the developing of the plans, they were engaged and participated.
Okay, well, thank you. Very helpful, and I think a very important discussion, really. Yeah. Okay, I suggest we go to the next presentation now. Sorry? Yeah, the legally binding part actually is not up to me. I don't know whether anybody would respond on that. You on the legal point?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Serge Capto. I'm with the Strategic Policy Team in UNDP in New York, supporting the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So the question on the legally binding, the agenda, the 2030 agenda is not legally binding. It's a voluntary agenda by member states, but it comes with a very high level of political commitments because world leaders themselves have signed off on that agenda. So in legal terms, it's not binding, but it comes with that very high political commitment that allows us to do the work that we're doing now, particularly supporting countries in integrating this agenda and ensuring full alignment with their national planning processes. And that's irrespective of the political consideration of the governments. In the work that we do, we'll be talking about the MAPS common approach that we've supported in some countries. We always try to meet with all the constituencies in the country to see how they can all contribute at their level, irrespective of their political affiliation, to the implementation of the agenda to ensure that national ownership.
Thank you. Very, very helpful. The very last contribution to this discussion.
In support of what the gentleman said, if you remember the MDGs which came out in 2000. In 2012, they recognized that they were going to fall short of the 2015 target. But it's not like anybody was going to be punished or charged or anything like that. So it's possible that people may not achieve their target, but it's a process that I guess the United Nations is constantly looking at. So in looking at it, from 2015 to 2030, they now have these 17 goals, and again, we're going to try, recognizing the errors that were made before, and we're more equipped now, everybody's more on board, so hopefully, according to them this morning, it's something, but it's something. They said it this morning. Something but achievable. A lot ambitious, but achievable. Yes.
Very good. Yeah, and there's, in my own experience, because I was involved in the MDGs, there's also a lot, and in looking at the gaps of what countries did not or did not yet achieve, there's also some peer pressure element, which plays a role. You look at each other, and it can be negative and positive, but it has an effect.
My name is Terrell Mop from the Ministry of Economic Planning. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines thank the UN for inviting us to this important conference, a forum that already has provided rich insight. We are fully committed to the SDGs as a country, whole of government, and whole of society. We have recently created a Sustainable Development Unit and integrated it into the Ministry of Economic Planning, so that we have a Ministry of Economic Planning and Sustainable Development. We have started the process of building awareness of the SDGs throughout St. Vincent, but we recognize that far more work has to be done in that area. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is in the process of modifying the National Development Plan, which runs 2013 to 2025, to incorporate the SDGs. I think my colleagues and the speakers this morning have sufficiently covered the challenges that we all face in the implementation of the SDGs. But I just want to strengthen the issue of climate change. My country, like the other Caribbean islands, is facing increasing occurrences of natural disasters. And as I speak, SVG is now battling from severe flooding. So my colleagues and I are a little uneasy right now. These disasters have adversely affected our fiscal sustainability, making it even more difficult to finance programs geared at achieving the SDGs. But in spite of the challenges that we all know, the SDGs present the opportunity to strengthen existing partnerships and to build new ones, locally, regionally, and internationally. Today is a perfect example of that. And the delegates of SVG intend to take full advantage to learn from the experiences of our sister islands. With that, I thank you, and we look forward to a productive and informative conference. Thank you.
My name is Colleen Murdoch, and I am Senior Advisor in the Office of the Prime Minister. And I want to give very briefly Antigua and Barbuda, Eastern Caribbean, close to St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica. I would like to give a very brief exposition. I think I may even outdo St. Vincent and the Grenadines on where we are with our SDG implementation in Antigua and Barbuda and the challenges that we are facing. I think Antigua and Barbuda, although some limited progress has been made, has not reached far in establishing the institutional mechanisms necessary for full implementation of the SDGs. We think this is both good and bad. It's good in the sense that in spite of the limited institutional progress, we have made advances in some areas of the SDGs, but it's bad in the sense of continuity and setting up a sustainable mechanism that can fully implement the SDGs. In January of this year, an SDG committee was formed based on a decision of the Prime Minister and his cabinet. And this committee, in short order, found itself inadequate in addressing the problem and decided to go back to the drawing board and resubmit to the cabinet a fresh vision of how the implementation committee should be institutionalized. The previous structure we had found to be inappropriate. It was a committee of many high-ranking persons and very few technical persons. So it was found to be top-heavy, and in that sense, not very capable of doing the work that was necessary. So we have made progress in some areas. In the goals 6 to 8, 11 to 16, especially in areas such as the sea and its resources, environmental protection, and some progress has been made in accessing funds for environmental projects, especially from the Global Climate Fund and from the Global Environmental Facility. One thing that we have found, which I would like to mention, which we have found to be important, is that Antigua and Barbuda is a member state of the OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And this is a treaty-based organization which, in fact, assigns certain powers to the center, the organization, and other powers to the member states. So, in fact, there are certain things that Antigua and Barbuda cannot do by itself. It requires the authorization and support of the OECS. To give you an example, Antigua and Barbuda cannot set its own monetary policy. If we want to set our monetary policy, if you want to change the value of our currency, which is a common currency we share with the other member states of the OECS, it requires not only their approval, it requires their unanimous approval. And this has affected the implementation of the SDGs, because certain areas, the sea and its resources, the environment and its protection, these areas fall to the center under the terms of the revised Treaty of Bastille. And therefore, decisions in these areas and implementation of policies in these areas are required to be coordinated with the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I would like to highlight also that we have the support of Prime Minister Brown and his cabinet, and they are committed to establishing appropriate institutional procedures that can advance SDG implementation. Now, our challenges largely relate to our medium-term development strategy, which highlights that the government of Antigua and Barbuda is determined to do all in its power to lead the country to being a harmonious, prosperous, and modern Antigua and Barbuda, founded on the principles of sustainability and inclusive growth. Our citizens, we hope, will have a high standard of living as Antigua and Barbuda strives to become an economic powerhouse in the region. The singular goal to which public sector actions will be directed is to improve the quality of life of all Antiguans and Barbudans and their prosperity. The goal, which sits at the apex of the Sustainable Development Framework, reflects the essence of the country's vision and the desire of its government and people for development. So, sustainable development is a necessary condition for achieving the goals as set out in the medium-term development strategy. The problems we have encountered lie largely in coordination. The coordination of SDG implementation and its policies, we have found that even the limited progress that we have achieved has been achieved in different silos. And quite often, other agencies and ministries of the government are not even aware of the progress that has been achieved in particular areas. So, the overarching, the coordinating function is what needs to be improved, and we have found this to be a particular challenge. Another challenge is funding. Antigua and Barbuda, like many other OECS and CARICOM states, we have very little fiscal space left. Our pie has been eaten by the IMF. And we, at least until the middle of 2018, Antigua and Barbuda will be in a very difficult fiscal position when it comes to sourcing funds for implementing the SDGs. Another challenge we have found is data. This is to some degree a self-inflicted wound because quite often the data is available, but the data has not been communicated to those who need the data. So there's a general lack of data, and there is what I find to be imprecise talk by many public officials. The inflation rate is just about 3.5%. The growth rate is approximately 2.8%. But if you add the words approximately and just about, it makes anything that follows meaningless. So we have the data problem. And we need funding for directed surveys that drill down into the precise information that is needed to inform the policymakers. So what have we done? We have approached the United Nations Development Program, and we have requested a scoping mission to determine those actions that we have taken so far, how well do they align themselves with the SDG implementation goals. And this, I think, will be very helpful to us going forward. We look forward to that. We understand we're in the queue, but we hope that we will be gotten to in short order and that we will be able to advance the SDG implementation process in Antigua and Barbuda. I thank you.
My name is Edison Aline. I'm the Permanent Secretary, Sustainable Development in Barbados in the Prime Minister's office. So the responsibility, you can say, lies a lot on my shoulders. Right? Yeah. Okay. I will now provide briefly the Barbados perspective on the Sustainable Development Goals. Our Governor General, back in 2013, in his sworn speech in Parliament, stated that the government will maintain its commitment to the full development of Barbados society and that the parliamentary term envisions a Barbados that is socially balanced, environmentally viable, it should be economically viable, environmentally sound, and characterized by good governance. We have a vision in our medium-term growth and development framework, and this sets out for Barbados that is one that is underpinned by the country's long-term goal, which is to become a fully developed and people-centered society through new development pathways. Given the importance of sustained development, and particularly that of small island developing states, on the international agenda, the Prime Minister's Office is spearheading a coherent and cohesive approach to the treatment of sustained development in leading the effective coordination of Barbados' implementation of the United Nations resolution adopted in 2015, transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. A sustainable unit, as I mentioned just now, has been established and headed by a permanent secretary, responsible mainly for overseeing the gathering of information, data, and updates, along with any particular difficulties that the ministry departments face in achieving the goals. The inputs needed from our global partnerships to assist us in the way forward, that's also the task of that unit. Now, our progress achieved so far. The progress that Barbados has achieved so far, I will now look at. According to the just complete assessment of Barbados' status as regards the implementation of the MDGs, the University of West Indies in 2015 indicated that the main targets have been achieved in relation to Goal 2, primary education, Goal 4, child mortality, Goal 5, maternal mortality, and Goal 6, HIV/AIDS and other diseases. We have approved the STEP approach for the implementation of the SDGs. And now we're waiting on the ministries to complete their tables for the alignment of the SDGs as they relate to the various ministries, departments, private sector, and etc. And they also will identify the contact persons in the ministries who then the unit will check with, and also an identification of the key targets and indicators that should be kept for approval by the Cabinet. Recently, we had a meeting with UNDP Barbados regarding technical assistance on a roadmap for SDG implementation similar to that of Jamaica, as well as any other technical assistance that can be provided, because this is very important to us. In our revised physical development plan, it states, among other things, that housing and construction must be in line with sustainable development, along with a green, healthy, prosperous, and resilient nation. Now, in terms of our challenges and opportunities, similar like the other Caribbean countries, the relevant thing, the lack of resources, the gathering of data, and those kinds of things. But what is important that the United Nations Economic and Social Council has identified that the financial commitment for attaining the SDGs is in the region of $3 trillion US. What a large sum. The question to be resolved is, how do we get the development banks to provide financing for the SDGs, bearing in mind the fiscal stress that some developing countries face in financing their budgets and the repayment of loans that will be at the expense in reducing this social provision? Two, what strategies will be put in place to ensure the balancing of GDP growth with job creation and the enrichment of the population? Now, our expected outcomes from this workshop, we are hoping that when we go away, we will have a clear sense of direction and a refined strategy on how the Caribbean sub-region, including Barbados, seeks to collectively address the sheer challenges confronting the countries of the region and the region as a whole in meeting SDG targets. We also like to see the formulation of a methodology for securing formal partnerships and proposals on a partnership framework among governmental and non-governmental stakeholders, including academia, youth, private sector, and civil society, in pursuit of the SDGs. And also, lastly, we want to see identification of the appropriate solutions and strategies for the successful implementation of the SDGs. One quick point, though. We speak about sustainable development goals. The issue is that countries already have in place what we call development goals. But in order to finance them, they must be sustainable from a financial perspective. Because if you do not have in place an effective debt management strategy, no matter what you do, those development goals will never ever become sustainable. And what is key is that in many developing countries, the very same thing that they think that will get them out of the fiscal crisis is the very same thing that put them in. Essentially what I'm saying is that you borrow money for the development, and then you realize in order to pay them, you have to reduce the social provisioning. And I thank you. Okay.
My name is Kira Paul. I'm the Social Development Planner in the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development and Investment, Dominica. Dominica has not yet put in place any of the necessary structures that will allow the state to effectively carry out its responsibilities under the 2030 agenda. However, in the interim, the Ministry of Planning is responsible for the mainstreaming of the SDGs across the line ministries and also for coordinating some of the activities to support the Sustainable Development Agenda. The Office of the Central Statistics Office is also charged with the responsibility for data generation and construction, and also to serve as the data repository on the SDGs. The Central Statistics Office has already identified where some of the data will be coming from to feed into the SDGs reports, although the office is cognizant that there are several data gaps that need addressing through new initiatives and also probably enhanced processes. Dominica has, we produce medium-term national development plans, what we call the GSPS, the Growth and Social Protection Strategy, and this is done over a 5-year period. We are scheduled to review the next medium-term plan in September of this year, and it provides an opportune time to mainstream the SDGs into the national and development framework using a longer period, so that is beyond 2018. We've recently developed a national model that is arranged by thematic areas and that reflect the cultural heritage of Dominica so that it guides the integration of the SDGs into the GSPS. So, like I said, one of the opportunities that we recognize that is coming out from this SDG is that there will be longer-term planning beyond 5 years that can take us up to 2030. It provides also opportunities for multi-stakeholder partnerships for sustainable development, and we recognize that there are several gaps in terms of engaging the civil society organizations in planning. It also provides the opportunity to modernize our national statistical systems and to build evidence for the development of strategic and cross-cutting policies. We recognize that with the right policies and investment and the engagement of young people and even vulnerable groups who can nurture their own potential, they can also become problem solvers, creators, entrepreneurs, change agents, and leaders. That is what that will be required to ensure that we meet the SDGs. So analytical work has already begun to identify some of the drivers and bottlenecks to sustainable development. And so we've recognized that we need to pursue the development of a population policy and a social protection policy that have implications for sustainable development. So these two initiatives would be the first of their kinds. The social protection policy, what we hope will be a consolidated policy that will frame all the various existing and potential social protection initiatives, while the population policy will help us to achieve population growth through expeditious interventions utilizing a sustainable development framework. We recognize that the population of Dominica is on a a decline. We have fewer birth rates, we have an aging population, and so we need to address those things if we are to really achieve sustainable development. In an effort to shape the budget allocations in the cycle of 2017-2018, the Ministry of Planning organized a series of meetings to collaboratively prioritize some of the right investments and cross-cutting programs that balance social protection development, economic growth, and effective management of domestic resources. Additionally, the state prepares an annual economic and social review that is used as a monitoring tool of the progress of the country towards its development agenda. And starting this year, the Ministry of Planning requested that all ministries and departments provide submissions that contribute to domestic sustainable development. In that way, there will be greater responsibility of the various ministries to integrate the SDGs into their own departmental plans, and we're also building a sort of SDG monitoring culture. Moving forward, what we plan to do is to, as I said, we do not have the necessary national coordinating mechanism in place, and we intend to prioritize that activity. Thank you.
I'm Angela Estwick, and I'm the Director of Development Planning and Policy in Montserrat. So for us in Montserrat, the SDG initiative is not as advanced as we would have anticipated at this stage. There has been progress in some areas, but it has been very limited and ad hoc. However, at the ministerial level, the buy-in has been secured, and there is awareness of the expectations from the various sectors. To date, the coordination of the program is primarily led by the Development Planning and the Policy Unit. Its collaborative partners are the Statistics Department and the Monitoring and Evaluation Units, 3 independent units. The intention is to seek to align the goals and the targets with our national frameworks, the most high-level one of which is our SDP. We also have a 3-year policy agenda which focuses on economic sector, social, environmental, governance, and population. And we are also bound to a log frame which we are mandated to establish to ensure that we achieve the targets in that log frame as part of our budgetary aid commitments. So the advancement towards the implementation of the SDGs has been challenged by a number of factors, with institutional and HR, human resource factors, being some of those key challenges. On the M&E end, for example, we are still trying to put in place the right institutional framework to cope with the single national performance framework, with which we have also been charged to establish, and it has been agreed that it should feature elements of the SDG system. On the statistics end, the chief statistician who leads the technical work in that department, we have been without a senior person at the statistics department for the past 5 years. So we now have someone recently in place, and the collaboration with the policy and planning, well, the development planning and policy unit has been forged with the individual who has just assumed the role. So therefore, we are working through the operational arrangements to pursue the achievement of the SDG goals and the targets. There is agreement that our first step should be the national sensitization process, followed by the mainstreaming of the SDGs across the government ministries through inclusion in their strategic plans. And following that, we've agreed that we should establish a national SDG committee. Now, as previously mentioned, the HR and the institutional issues that have impeded the more rapid advancement of the SDG process, there is also a constraint of operational issues. We are trying to do a number of things at the same time, and 2 of those are the building blocks in the SDG implementation process. At the policy level, we are trying to implement the program budgeting, and we are working on enhancing our statistical system. So we are doing interdependent activities concurrently, and this in itself is a challenge. but we are confident that we'll be able to forge ahead with our SDG implementation and the alignment as we seek to kill, well, permit me to say 4 birds with 1 stone over the coming months. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think what is really nice about this session is that there is a kind of realistic representation also where countries are. That's very important.
My name is Donna Levi, and I am from Guyana. It would be remiss of me if I did not come to tell you the progress that has been made by Guyana to date in the implementation of the SDGs. Actually, I was told that I should not be speaking now, but I don't, my day is supposed to be on Friday because I'm supposed to talk about the success that we have made thus far. But even so, there are the challenges that I want to tell you about and where we go from here. Now, Guyana's commitment to the implementation of the SDGs. Guyana's commitment was made at the high-level forum in 2015 in New York at the Sustainable Development High-Level Forum by Guyana's President, His Excellency David Granger. He declared full support for the 2030 agenda and endorsed that it would be linked to our green development strategy. Thus far, Guyana has created a framework with the assistance of the United Nations Environmental Program. From that framework, we will be building our development strategy, our green development strategy, which will be completed within the next year. I asked to be last because I wanted to let you know that Guyana was the first country in the region that signed on to the UN MSDF. And this was done in October of 2016. The UN MSDF was formally launched on the 27th of January on the lawns of the Parliament building, thus allowing the members of the public to see and to be formed of that development process. Just on the very day prior to the launching of the UN MSDF and also the country implementation plan, a joint national steering committee was established, and the first meeting was held on that day. It was held also in the Parliament chambers, the chambers of Guyana's Parliament. The Joint National Steering Committee comprises ministers of government, thus showing again Guyana's support and endorsement to the implementation of the SDG 2030 agenda. Now, why did we launch, or why did we have a joint national steering committee? That is because Guyana adopted the delivering as one modality to roll out the 2017-2021 program cycle. As a result of that, the 2 authorizing bodies, the Joint National Steering Committee and a results group comprising permanent secretaries of the government ministries and budget agencies, heads of budget agencies, meet. The Joint National Steering Committee meets twice per year, and the result group that is responsible for the actual implementation of the program, they meet as needs be. Now, the Joint National Steering Committee is the highest decision-making entity for overseeing the annual UN SIP. And it comprises not only ministers of government, but heads of resident and non-resident UN agencies. The SIP. The SIP is the country implementation plan that is developed on a yearly basis. It was signed between our minister, the Minister of Finance, and that's my minister, and the head of the UN country team, which is Ms. Mikiko Tanaka, the resident coordinator. From there, the results group was established to represent 4 pillars, the 4 pillars that we know about, and each result group is headed by a core chair from the UN agency and a permanent secretary. Now, all of these, thus far, we have done substantial work, and that work could not have been done without the support of the UNCT and the commitment of the permanent secretaries and the head of budget agencies. Between February of this year and June this month, 19 meetings have been held. 19 meetings with permanent secretaries and the heads of the co-chairs of the UNCT. What was the result? The result was a monitoring and reporting tool that was developed and agreed to between the government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the UNCT. That monitoring mechanism consists of 3 matrices. One is at the activity level, the other is at the indicator level, and the third is the collection matrix. Now let me explain a bit about these matrices. Pardon me? In view of time, no, I'll be very brief. The activity matrix, like the name says what is to be done. And it says who does what, when the activity starts, when it ends, the cost of the activity. The indicator matrix says exactly what it is we're looking for. What are the targets? What are we expecting? What are those outcomes? And the data collection matrix is very important because it says who does what, who collects what is collected, when is it collected, by which time is it supposed to be collected. So this is where we are at this point in time, and we have learned a lot of lessons from the exercise. I will not go into some of those, but I'll tell you what are some of the challenges that we are encountering. One is the lack of timely and reliable data to monitor the progress. That is why the activity matrix will come in handy, because it will tell us what is lacking, where it is lacking, how do we collect it, who does the collection. Another challenge that we have as we move forward towards implementing the SDGs is the lack of resources, financial, physical, human resources. It is difficult for us at times to stop the people migrating from Guyana, those skilled resources that we need. What are our expectations from this forum? We hope that we can learn, although we have progressed somewhat, we hope that we can learn from our sister Caribbean nations, what they have done, what they have learned thus far, and we also hope to use this platform to strengthen our relations with our CARICOM sisters and our development partners. Last but not least, we hope that this forum will direct us to locate resources for the implementation of the SDGs.
Well, thank you very much also for providing some specific tools that you're working with. This concludes our session for this afternoon.